Hi guys, welcome to this afternoon's game. I've quite enjoyed the last 1814 game I played, so we're doing another one along that theme today. And we're playing a scenario where Napoleon is throwing his young guard in to try and do a spoiling attack against some advancing Prussian forces. So let's have a look what we've got today. So as you can see, we're playing with my pre-built board terrain. These are all in 2 foot by 2 foot squares, and we're playing that rather than the terrain map today, just to give us a bit of different scenery. It does. I really like the look of it when we're playing on it, but doesn't give me so many options in terms of board flexibility, so I tend not to use it so often. Anyway, let's have a look at the Prussians. So we've got a Prussian medium artillery battery here on the hill. We then have a Prussian regiment of Westphalian Landwehr. They will be fighting as reservists in this game. We then have the 6th Regular Infantry Regiment. The Fusiliers will be fighting as veterans, the other two as regulars. And then finally, another one of my favourite units, we will have Lutzow and his brigades, and again they will be fighting as reservists. We have actually 2 Lutzow battalions and 1 regular battalion that make up this regiment, but they'll all be fighting as reservists in this game. So we've got 9 Prussian battalions, 6 reservists and 3 regulars, and they'll be fighting against the Young Guard, and in 1814 we'll treat the Young Guard as regulars, but they are supported by a large Old Guard artillery battery. Then we've got 4 battalions of tirailleurs, I think they are, with the red pom-poms. So 4 battalions of those. 2 battalions of voltigeurs, again with a Young Guard skirmish screen. These are all peri-metals, apart from the skirmish screen, where I went to Foundry because they did Young Guard skirmishers. So I think they look pretty good. They're slightly more chunky than the peri figures. Also sculpted by the peris, I think. And then finally in support, we have some more Guard. So we have the Guard Chasseurs à Cheval, and they will be fighting as elite today. The Prussians also have my new, as you have seen, I'm sure, Landwehr Lancers. They are on off-table reserve at the moment. All right, so both sides have 3 brigades, and we'll see how the game unfolds. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, so we've rolled for activation. The Prussians went for artillery assault on the battery on the hill. That has gone off, and all the other Prussian regiments are active. For the French, they have allocated all their ADCs to bring in their off-table reserve on, which is 2 battalions of Grenadiers of the Old Guard, so they are available and can enter the table this turn. But because they didn't have any re-rolls, their small brigade of Young Guard has gone hesitant this turn. All right, let's roll for initiative. The French are at -1 because they have 1 hesitant brigade. The French roll an 8, and the Prussians roll an 8. So with that modifier, the Prussians get to go first. All right, we'll do movement in turn 1. Okay, so at the end of turn 1 movement, the French chasseurs, Cheval of the Guard down here, have moved forward. They reformed, being elites, into column, and have moved across the ford here. The Young Guard there are pinned because they were hesitant. The Young Guard in the centre have started moving forward, and they're now approaching or crossing this little stream, and they're now supported by their elder brethren of the Old Guard. So we've got 1 Old Guard battalion there in greatcoats and 1 in full dress uniform. We will now move on to firing, and the Prussians will open fire first. They'll be firing this battery on the hill. They are going to have a go at the chasseurs as they're a close target. That'll be at effective range, and let's see how they do. Okay, actually the measurement is close range just, but I'm going to count it as effective range because they are firing off that escarpment down at the chasseurs. Therefore, I don't think they'll be able to fire shrapnel, as that will get the cone of fire would be disrupted by the edge of the cliff. So they are going to be firing ball shot. So that'll be effectively effective. We'll do it treat it as effective range. They do have artillery assault, so we get 2 extra casualty dice. They both come off, but we roll a 3. So that'll be 2 casualties on the chasseurs and unfortunately 1 on the Prussian gunners for the exertion of doing that shelling. Okay, just done Prussian skirmisher fire, and these Prussian skirmishers, these Jaegers up on the hill, have caused another casualty on the chasseurs. The skirmish screen of Jaegers here did remarkably well and caused 2 casualties on the young guard skirmisher screen facing them. And then this skirmisher screen also did well and caused 2 casualties on the old guard artillery battery. So a good turn of firing for the Prussians, and let's see what the French return fire does. So first we're going to fire the old guard artillery. This is a large battery, so there will be more impact from this if they cause a discipline test. So they'll open fire against this battalion of Lutzow infantry. Wow, that's pretty good. So that's 11 casualties on the column. We'll now see how many extra combat dice they get. Not 11 casualties, a casualty roll of 11. Back in a second. So the guard artillery live up to their reputation. They cause 4 casualties on this Lutzow infantry battalion. They get an extra combat dice for firing at a column at effective range and an extra combat dice for being an elite battery that caused a discipline test. Let's do this discipline test a little bit, -1. They roll a 12, so they're absolutely fine. All right, that's it. We'll now finish French firing. We'll do their skirmishers and then we'll start turn 2. Okay, so we're on to turn 2, and the Prussians have retained initiative. The French unfortunately went hesitant with their chasseurs, as they didn't have a reroll available for that because they only had 3 ADCs, and they applied those all to their infantry brigades, which are all active. For the Prussians, they took a risk and they have brought on their Landwehr Lancers, but their central brigade here has also gone hesitant as a result of not having a reroll. All right, Prussians to move first as they have the initiative in turn 2. Okay, movement's ended on turn 2. The Prussian Landwehr Cavalry has come on in reserve. The Lutzow Brigade has deployed into line to protect itself against the Prussian artillery fire. It'll resume its move forward next turn, but might reorient its plans depending on what it sees the old guard doing as they're angling in its direction. The young guard in the centre continues to push forward, and the Prussians here, who were hesitant, have deployed into line, again to protect themselves from artillery fire and potentially stave off these attacking French columns. The Landwehr stayed where it was, didn't want to expose itself any closer to the French cavalry. The other young guard brigade has started moving forward, and the guard chasseurs have deployed into line again to take less damage from the Prussian artillery fire. All right, let's move on to shooting. Prussians to shoot first. Will fire their artillery battery again at the chasseurs. We roll a 6. We don't have artillery assault this turn because we put everything on bringing our reserves on. So a 6 will not be very much. A 6 at effective range is 1 casualty on the chasseurs. I'll now fire the skirmishers back in a sec. Okay, so the various different skirmishers have exchanged fire, caused a couple of casualties, another one suffered by the guard artillery, and some casualties on the Prussian Landwehr. All right, now for the Prussian guard artillery, it will open fire. Again, it'll go for the same battalion of Lutzow's brigade and try and get some bounce through against the battalion that's behind it. 3, they do a casualty to themselves, and the bounce through does do 1 casualty against the battalion in the rear. Right, for turn 3, the French have the initiative, and the Prussians again have put artillery assault on their battery. and the French did likewise put artillery assault on their battery on the far right. Okay, French movement to start with. Their young guard brigade in the centre went hesitant, and the battalion or brigade of Prussians facing it are also hesitant this turn. Everything else is active. French to move. First for them to consider charges, and then normal movement. All right, things are hotting up this turn, so we've moved the Lutzow battalion slightly to its right, so it's firmly anchored on that rocky bluff. The guard battalions opposite charged the Prussian skirmisher screen to drive it off, forcing it to fall back. It successfully passed its discipline test, so it didn't lose a base and retired in good order in front of that old guard charge. Over here on the flank of the French, the Landwehr Lancers have moved forward rapidly down this rocky bluff. They took an extra casualty for moving over that terrain obstacle, but did execute the move. As we move across the board, the Prussian positions remain unchanged, and the guard chasseurs have again moved forward, changed formation, so they're potentially ready to charge next turn, and the other young guard brigade is now moving up into assault positions. But none of the infantry yet has infantry assault orders, so the French will need to get those in place. All right, let's start this turn with the firing now for the French, starting with the guard artillery. Which target will they choose? Will they try and shoot the guard foot attack in, or will they have to do something about these encroaching lancers? I think they're going to have to switch fire and take a pot shot at the lancers. Actually, the guard artillery, I've concluded, can't. I think the lancers have moved out of its arc of fire, so we're going to fire at this Lutzow battalion down here. Let's see how we do. Guard artillery, open up. Again, they cause a 4. I don't know whether as elite that will cause them a fatigue casualty on themselves, but we will just check. Not a great round of shooting from the guard artillery. Okay, after poor firing by the French guns, the French skirmishers have been pretty effective. The set of 2 skirmishers here on the hill have inflicted 2 casualties on the Prussian skirmish screens that are protecting the guns. The French skirmishers in the centre didn't cause any casualties, but we then took a shot with an inferior volley by the advancing young guard column here at its Prussian foes here, and yep, we rolled a 6. So I didn't think it would come to anything, so I hadn't done it on camera, but it has. So an inferior volley, 6, is 4 casualties and a discipline test. And let's have a look. Yep, that's the only modifiers. So that will be 4 casualties and a discipline test against the Landwehr, and they will be now testing as conscripts, as they, by definition, have a -1 modifier. So they roll an 8, that goes down to a 7. They remain on the field, but they do move up to 4 casualties. Not a bad random volley for the French there as they moved forward. All right, now the time for the Prussian return fire. We'll start with the Prussian artillery battery on the hill again. That will open up at the chasseurs of the guard, and it will get bounced through onto that foremost young guard battalion as well. Let's see how they do. They have artillery assault on. They roll a 5. They do get 1 extra casualty from the casualty dice, but a 5 at effective range is 1 casualty, so that's 2 casualties on the chasseurs. Let's roll for bounce through, and they get a bounce through casualty on the young guard. All right, I'll be back after finishing skirmisher fire. Okay, so now for some serious volleying. This Lutzow battalion is going to open fire. It will be an inferior volley as it's shuffled to the right, and it will be at -1 modifier because of the casualties, but it'll have a go at that old guard column that's approaching it. It rolls a 5, I don't think, as an inferior volley. That will do anything, no. They would simply lose fire disciplines, and they are reservists, so they do count now as conscripts/recruits, so they do lose fire discipline. Otherwise, down here, I think the Landwehr will return the favour, so they will do volleys at half effect. And actually, I didn't halve the casualties on the Landwehr, so should have been only 2 casualties in the discipline test. So that takes their casualties down to 3. No other changes. They will do their 2 volleys. They didn't move this turn, so it'll be simply half effect volleys, and it'll be as regulars, because neither of the battalions are now at 4 casualties. We'll start with the left-hand battalion, firing at the young guard. They roll an 8. For a standard volley is 3 casualties. We halve that, we round that down to 1. That'll be 1 more casualty on this young guard battalion. And then we'll fire into the chasseurs. And we roll a 5. I don't think that'll be anything. That'll be 1 casualty. We halve that. That takes it below 1. That'll be no effect. That's it. That's firing done for the end of turn 3. Let's move on. Or is this end of turn 2 or end of turn 3? I think it's end of... I will just check this out. I've got a feeling this is the end of turn 3. But let me just check. Well, I can't honestly remember. I think we're on. That was the end of turn 3. So I've put us on turn 4, but we're not playing to a turn limit in this game. Just simply either side breaking 2 enemy brigades will be sufficient for victory. Unfortunately for the French, we've had a bit of a tragedy. We put artillery assault on our old guard as they were moving into assault position. Unfortunately, they failed that and they failed their reroll. So the old guard have gone hesitant. All other French brigades are active. And the Prussians have again managed to get artillery assault off on the battery on the hill. And all other brigades for the Prussians are active this turn. And the Prussians have initiative. So Prussians to move first. Let's see whether they have any charges. Okay, so this does not look good for the guard artillery. The Lancers have swung in from their flank. They were able to pivot. You can move your... you get an extra charge bonus of 6 inches. And you can pivot up to that, which the Lancers did. It's brought them on to the guns. And as we saw last turn, they were out of the guns' arc of fire. The guns should have realised that, but they only clocked that in the fire phase, so they haven't had a chance to react. So this looks like bad news for the guard artillery. I don't think it'll survive this charge from this large Lancer unit, but we'll see. As we move across the table, none of the line infantry units have charged, because no one can bring supports in from an attacking perspective, but the chasseurs have decided they don't want to sit in front of the Prussian guns, so have taken the opportunity of charging the Landwehr. Let's see how they do. They were too close for the Landwehr to try and form square, so this could be tough for the Landwehr. So although the cavalry started outside the arc of fire, they do have to stop at 3 inches, as they have here, from the artillery battery. And I think given the size of the Lancer formation, it's pretty clear that they are in the artillery battery's arc of fire, so the artillery battery will get a defensive shot. So let's do the defensive shot before we work out the charge results. So here is the guard artillery. It rolls a 7, and this will be at close range. It'll be at -1 because I think they've already taken 4 casualties. I will just check that. They are firing canister, so they get an extra combat dice, which does cause a casualty. Battery fire at close quarters with a 7 is 2 casualties in a discipline test, and as they are elite and they've caused a discipline test, they get another casualty dice. Okay, so that's now 4 casualties and a discipline test on the Lancers. Perhaps the guard artillery have shown their mettle and might have a chance of repelling this charge. Okay, so I was forgetting the 4 casualties on the guard artillery, so although they rolled a 7, so we can see here that gets reduced to a 6. So it's only 2 casualties and no discipline test. So they don't get the bonus artillery dice, they don't get that bonus casualty, and they don't force a discipline test on the Lancers. But they have caused 3 casualties on the Lancers rather than 4. It does take the Lancers up to 4 casualties. So the Lancers will have a tough charge result as we see whether they charge home, given that devastating set of shrapnel, or canister rather, fired by the old guard. Okay, let's do the charge results. Okay, let's roll the charge results. This will be +4 for... Let's just check that again. I think this will be +4 to the French. Yep, sorry about that hesitation. This will be +4 for the French. But the Prussians do get a reroll because a large unit can indeed support itself if it's in 2 waves, as this one is, or 2 wings. So the Prussians get a reroll on this, but it is +4 for the French. Well, that looks pretty good. Looks like the French have repulsed this charge. The Prussians get a 7. The French get a 10. +4 is 14. They win by more than 6. So they repulse the charge. The cavalry retreats and takes 1d3 casualties. All right, let's see how many more casualties the Prussians take. They take 2 more casualties and have to retreat. Right, we'll do the charge for the chasseurs. Firstly, we get a defensive volley from the Landwehr. They roll a 10. That's pretty good. That will be half effect. But a 10 for a standard volley is 4 casualties in a discipline test, so that will be 2 casualties on the chasseurs and a discipline test. So let's see how they do on the discipline test. They roll an 8. They will be fine. They've now taken 8 casualties. That would be at -2, but they are elites, so they will be fine for that. But 2 casualties caused in the charge. All right, now let's see if they get some supporting fire, actually, if this other battalion is in 3 inches. Which it might be. No, it's just outside 3 inches, so you don't get any supporting fire from the neighbouring column. All right, let's do the charge results as the French charge home, or try to charge home against the Landwehr. Okay, so the charge results will be +1 to the Prussians. They will get a reroll as well because they have this battalion in defensive support to their rear. The chasseurs get +2 for being guard, +1 for their commander. The Landwehr get +2 for being in battalion. They normally get +1 because they inflicted 2 casualties on guard, but guard units or elite units ignore the first 2 casualties, and they need to cause 10 casualties on a unit for it to flip up to -2. So no adjustments there. Let's see how we do. Reroll for the Prussians. The Prussians will take their reroll. They roll an 8. French roll a 7. That'll be a loss by 1. Cavalry versus infantry. The cavalry will take 1 casualty and they will retire. They will disorder that unit of young guard behind them. Again, it's a really challenging balance of what to film and what to not film. So just on the skirmishers, the Prussian skirmishers caused a couple of casualties against the guard, but nothing else. The French skirmishers did nothing, but the sharpshooters in amongst these rocks, not only did they cause 2 casualties on the Prussian skirmish screen that was up here last turn, they caused another 2 casualties this turn, which caused the Prussians to lose a base, and actually that destroyed that Prussian skirmish screen, so that will trigger a falter test on the Landwehr on the right flank of the Prussian force. So having done so well driving off the chasseurs cheval of the guard, they will now be forced to take a falter test. Okay, so we'll now return to normal fire, and we'll do the Prussian artillery fire. Again, another artillery assault, and they will fire at this unit of young guard and try and get bounced through against the unit behind it. Wow, they rolled 12, so that will be a destiny test. No bonuses, and at affecting a range, that's 12, is 4 more casualties, and a discipline test against the young guard. Let's take their discipline test. They roll a 12 themselves, they're all right in the discipline test. Now let's roll the destiny test for the Prussians. They roll a 9, which means they can recover 2 casualties or reform or melee with a Elan. So we will recover 2 casualties off the Landwehr, as they are part of the artillery's brigade. Or actually, I think you have to do it on the unit that fired itself, so I don't think I can. So the artillery remains undamaged on the hill, but no effect from that destiny test. All right, that's the Prussian artillery done. And of course the French artillery fired as it was charged by the Lancers this turn. So that's it. That's end of artillery and skirmisher fire. Let's see if there are any volleys. Again, the Lutzow battalion will fire against the old guard that are approaching it. We roll a 6. We didn't move this turn, but we have got 4 casualties, so that will be an inferior volley. A 6 is 1 more casualty against the guard. They're up to 3. Then this battalion of Prussian regulars will now open fire against the approaching young guard, against the closest of the 2 battalions. We've rolled a 6 again, so that'll be 1 casualty against them. And then the skirmishers are fired, and we will fire a half effect volley against against the approaching French columns, because it was the other battalion, of course, that got charged. That's a 6. That'll be halved. That'll do nothing. So So that's it. That's all the firing done, and that is the end of turn 4. And we'll move on with turn 5 with a Fulter test for the Landwehr. Okay, so French only had 2 ADCs, and they gambled and they put both on their Young Guard brigade in the centre, which activated. So they have managed to get infantry assault off on that brigade. All other French brigades are active, and indeed, as are all other Prussian brigades. We now have 2 ADCs left, and we will do the Fulter tests for the Landwehr. Let's hope they pull this off, otherwise this will be a serious hole in the Prussian position. They roll a 4, and this brigade still counts as regulars, as they are all above half strength. So on 4, that's a rally. You must step back if you're within 9 inches of enemy units. So we will have to step back, but we will remain on the table. We'll accept that result, and we will do that, and they are active. So let's do the roll-off for them. Do they count as initiative? So it is hesitant, so the Landwehr are hesitant. So the initiative roll will be -1 for the Prussians. The Prussians roll an 8, that goes down to a 7. They do have initiative as we start turn 5. I'll just do their step back moves. Okay, so we've got 3 charges in the turn, so the Old Guard have decided they're going to go for it. So they've charged the more damaged of the 2 Lutzow battalions, which means that actually the Lutzow's own skirmish screen also masks it from defensive fire from the supporting battalion, so definitely the right one to go for there. In the centre, 2 Young Guard battalions have charged and both have supports against these 2 Prussian regular battalions in the centre. Otherwise, battalions are unmoved. So we'll do the assaults from left to right. First, let's do the defensive volley from the Lutzow battalion. This will be as conscripts, so this will be an inferior volley. They roll a 5. I think as an inferior volley, that won't do anything. Note, they lose fire discipline, and there's no more casualties on the guard. They remain on 3. There'll be some passing fire from the skirmishers who are supporting them. They do cause 1 more casualty on the guard. That will be a -1 on the charge check, but only 1 casualty as a result of them charging in. I'll put a 1 there so I can remember the casualties on the charge. All right, we will do the rest of the volley firing at the moment, and then we'll come back and do the charge results one by one. So again, Prussian battalion here, opening up against the Young Guard, charging it. They roll an 8. That's a better volley. This is a standard volley. An 8 is 3 casualties against that attacking French battalion. And then finally, this one opens up against its attacking battalion. That's much better. That's an 11. That's pretty devastating. Standard volley is 4 casualties and a discipline test. So let's do the discipline test on that battalion, as they may not charge home if they do particularly badly. They roll an 8. They'll be at -1 with 4 casualties. That goes down to a 7, so they stay in charge mode. All right, now let's do the charge results. Okay, so this is +3 for the French for being elite, and both sides have attached their generals, but the casualties on the Prussians are taking them down. So let's see how we do. Prussians do get the benefit of 2 rerolls though. Wow. The French do really well. They roll a 12. Let's see what we do on the rerolls. That will be a destiny test. Try again. Okay, a 12 against a 9. All right, we'll just check those modifiers and see what the result is. Yep, I wanted to check that because if that was a win by 6, that would actually be a breakthrough. But actually they've only won by 5, because although you do get +1 for attaching your general, it only boosts your morale grade by 1 status. And if you're already elite, you can't go any higher. So the French do not get that extra +1, but the Prussians do. So it's simply +2 to the Prussians. So to the French, not +3. That means they've won by 5. So they take the ground, and the defender retreats with 1d3 casualties. So let's see how many extra casualties. The Prussians take 2 more casualties, and they retreat. They will fall back and actually disorder their colleagues, and the guard move through into their position. Okay, and let's see what we get for the destiny test for rolling the double 6. We roll a 2 on the destiny test. So the opposing brigadier is lost, and the Prussian brigade here will falter. So we have a falter test on the Prussians this turn. All right, let's move on to the attack here. It's +2 for the Prussians because of the number of casualties they caused on the French charging in. The French have a reroll. The Prussians have a reroll, but given that they have to choose where to apply this reroll from this defensive unit, to the right or to the left. We're going to go to the left because the battalion on the right caused more casualties on the charge in. So, okay, +2 to the Prussians, and both sides get a reroll. Well, this does look like the French are going to win this one actually as well. Oh my gosh, terrible dice rolling from the Prussians. Despite their reroll, they've got a double 1. The French have rolled a 10. That becomes an 8. So they have won by 6. So that's the victory. The defender takes 1d6 casualties, and the infantry battalion gets to charge on 3d6. So they will charge on an extra 10 inches, and that will take them into the next Prussian battalion. Okay, so the charge is continued by the French. We get an unformed volley now by the next line of Prussians. Actually, I'm not sure whether they can do an unformed volley because they run the risk of volleying their own men in the back. Yeah, well, let's assume they can. Unformed volley as the French go charging in again. Reroll a 5. Whether that could or couldn't happen, no impact from that. So there's a French charge home. This time the Prussians are unformed, and the Prussian general, although he survived the risk to general test, is attached to the retreating or routing battalion rather, so can't be attached to this one. So the French will have better odds in this combat. Okay, so for this one the French will be at +3 because the Prussians are unformed and the French have their general attached. The Prussians don't. The French also get a reroll. Let's see how we do this time. French get a 7, the Prussians get an 8. Shall we try for a reroll? The French get a +3 on there, so they're up to a 10. So that'll be a 10 against an 8. They will have won by 2. They will melee with Elan. Do we stick with that? Or do we try and reroll a 3 for a better result? I think we'll go for a melee with Elan because that still gives us a good chance of breaking that unit in the subsequent melee round. Mind you, if we get... Yeah, no, I think that's about as good as we're going to get. Prussians have got quite a good roll there, so we will stick with that one. All right, now let's do the charge result over here. Again, this one should go better for the Prussians, if only they roll better than they did last time. No supports this time, and the French do have a support, but the Prussians will be on neither side have a general to attach. The Prussians will be on a +3 because of the 5 casualties on the French and the 4 inflicted in this turn. So it'll be +3 on the Prussians, but the French have a reroll. So the French get an 8, Prussians get a 7, so that's a minus. So the French got up to 10, so they've lost by 2. So at 0 to -2, the French simply stop and launch a volley at the Prussians, which we do, and doesn't cause any casualties. So the French column stops in front of the Prussian line. All right, movement's completed. The Prussian lancers have formed up. The Lutzow battalion that was facing the French has wheeled to its right a bit, so it can try and do a volley. It didn't do a volley in support of the charge because its skirmish screen was in the way. Its skirmishers have moved forward to screen themselves a bit from the guns. Skirmishers can't fire this turn because they have already fired in response to the charge. Nothing really going on down here. The other Young Guard battalion has formed up, as have the cavalry. The Prussian Landwehr had to step back. They will step forward actually, so I will move them forward to reoccupy the front line with the musketeers here. That'll be it for movement, and we'll then move on to French shooting. Alright, there's been some firing, but most units have already been committed, so not much. The French Old Guard artillery opened fire and caused a casualty on that Lutzow battalion. They swung round and did a volley against the Old Guard and caused a couple of casualties. Skirmishers caused a couple of casualties down here, and then the Prussian artillery did remarkably well and rolled a double 6 and disordered again the Young Guard battalion here that's only just finished forming up and caused 4 casualties on it. So it went unformed as a result of its discipline test. Alright, that's it for firing in turn 5. We've just got some hand-to-hand combat to do. See how the Young Guard do against this musketeer battalion. Okay, straight roll off. French have got Elan. Whoa. So let's see how we do. The French get 3 casualties. I don't think the French actually did have a LAN. I think they just charged in, didn't they? Did they have a LAN? I should have marked that up. I will just go back and check. Okay, I have just checked that, and the French did indeed have a LAN, so they should have 6 dice, not just 5, so we'll roll more. Doesn't do anything, so the French simply win by 1 on this charge result, which will cause them to take the ground, and the losers retreat, which will probably force this Prussian brigade off the table. And remembering this battalion, yes, it was in victory mode, but it's simply got take the ground now, so it does indeed stop where it is. Okay, at the start of turn 6, it's still it's certainly in the balance. So we've got some faltering units here. We've got a falter test to do as the rear of these 2 battalions is currently routing for the Lutzow. The front one was simply unformed. And the 2 guard battalions are making good progress, but the French are still threatened by the Prussian lancers on their flank, and although they took quite a lot of casualties from the artillery, that might still be a threat. That means this flank may not be all over, but we've got a falter test to do there. We have also a falter test down here, and currently probably a broken brigade, as 1 unit has been forced off table on retreat orders, and this 2nd battalion down here is routing, and they will have to take a falter test. The Landwehr are still okay, and the 2nd Young Guard Brigade is continually being hammered by the Prussian artillery, which is proving effective on this flank in slowing this attack down. Effectively has tied up 2 of the French brigades. All right, some really important ADC rolls. We'll do these ones on camera as we start turn 6. All right, let's roll for ADCs. The French get 3, and the Prussians, fortunately for them, get 4. Let's allocate those out. Okay, so we did think about putting artillery infantry assault perhaps on the guard, but then I decided that, look, I've got good juicy targets in front of my lead battalions, and they can just keep pushing against these unformed units. So we will do that, and I won't take the risk of potentially failing with initiative in the centre here when I want to definitely break this other brigade. So I went for rerolls, and the French have got all their brigades active. Now we've got some really important falter tests. We do have 4 ADCs, so they're all allocated to the falter tests. Let's start with Lutzow first. First one is a 1. That's a savoir keeper. They need their reroll. Oh, let's do it properly. Okay, so Lutzow obeys orders. That's good. Right, and then the 2nd Brigade, this regulars in the centre, they obey orders as well. So good results from the Prussians. And let's roll for the Landwehr. They don't get a reroll, but they are active. And reroll for the Landwehr Cavalry. Oh, that's definitely caught in a hole. That's the trouble with a texture table. They're active as well. Okay, so everyone's active. Let's roll for initiative this turn. French get an 8. The French get initiative. Can they break these Prussian forces? Let's see what they do in turn 6. Okay, yeah, so 3 attacks gone in by the French. So the Guard have continued their attack down the river bank, making sure that they continue to hit the end of these Prussian lines to keep them out of counter-charge range from that Lutzow battalion. And indeed, they are far enough that with the necessary will, that Lutzow battalion will come up short and is unable to flank the Old Guard as they crash in here. And down in the main central part of the battlefield, the French have gone in again against these Prussian lines, and they've rotated their attacking battalions. So they've gone with their supporting battalions now, as neither of those have any casualties, and they're pushing those ones in. Let's see how the defensive fire goes and how these charge results play out. We'll start with the Old Guard. Okay, so defensive volley. We've got 2 casualties on this battalion, so that'll have no effect, but they are unformed. They rolled an 11, so that's pretty good. So even with the unformed modifier of -2, this will be a standard modifier. That is 3 casualties and a discipline test on the Guard. Takes them up to 7. Let's see what their discipline test is. A 5. Wow, that might make them go unformed. Elite goes +2, so a 5 goes to a 7. so they obey orders and they remain formed. Luckily for the Guard, but it is still 3 casualties. Put a dice next to them so we can remember that. Okay, let's go down here. We have 5 casualties and are unformed, so the defensive volley will be at -3 for this one. Again, another good roll for the Prussians. A 9 -3 goes down to a 6. This will be an inferior, standard volley. As these are musketeers, that's 1 casualty on the French. But again, that will have no effect on the charge results. And then here we've got another defensive volley, no modifiers on this one. And this is where they would have done best, but have rolled worse. Standard volley of 5 is just 1 casualty on the French. That'll have no impact on the charge results. All right, let's do the charge results, starting with the Old Guard. Okay, more good dice rolls needed by the French. They are on +3, but the Prussians do have 2 sets of support. Let's see how we do. Okay, so the French do pretty well. They roll a 9. The Prussians roll a 9 as well. The French will win by 3. So let's have a look as to whether they want to re-roll. On a +3, we will take the ground and cause 1d3 casualties. On the Prussians. And they're going to go for a re-roll. No, I think we'll take the retreat because we'll stay on table and we will not have to do a full to test this turn. So let's take that. We'll take 1d3 casualties. Unfortunately, we take 3 and we fall back through our colleagues and continue to remain unformed. Okay, so the Guard are looking pretty good. They're driving remorselessly this Prussian brigade off table, but haven't yet broken it. And the Prussians did pass their risk to general test. All right, let's do our charge results down here. Both units are regulars. The French have taken no casualties. The Prussians are unformed and have taken a casualty. Both are committing their brigadiers, so this will be +3 to the French, and the French get a re-roll. French need a re-roll as they've only rolled a 4. Okay, so that's an 8 plays an 8, but +3 for the French. So the Prussians have to retreat and take 1d3 casualties. That will drive them off the table, and indeed that brigade is now broken. Okay, and we have a straight roll-off in this assault here. No casualties on the French on the way in, and I think it was just 1, wasn't it? 1 casualty on the French on the way in. Both are full strength, both have support, so both gets re-rolls. Prussians have done well. They've rolled an 11. They won't go for a re-roll. The French roll an 8, so the French, I think, will bounce off this time. So that's an 8 against 11. That's -3. They retire with 1 casualty. Okay, at the end of turn 6, we've done the firing. We caused some more casualties on the Lutzow battalion. Their volley in turn unformed the Guard battalion that was approaching them. No firing in the centre here as all the units moved forward. We caused a couple of casualties from the Prussian artillery on the hill on one of the young Guard battalions that had just retired from combat. But in turn, the French skirmishers caused some casualties themselves. All right, on we go with ADCs for turn 7. We will have to do a full to test. No, it was simply a retreat down here, and again I feel it was a retreat down here, not a rout, as we drove in the French. The French drove in the Prussians down here and broke that brigade. So no full to test this turn. Let's roll for ADC activation. Okay, so everything's active this turn, so let's roll for initiative and see who's got initiative as we start turn 7. Looks like the Prussians have regained initiative. Prussians go first in turn 7. Any charges for them to declare? Okay, so Charlie's arrived and he's taking the Prussians on a more active route. So the Lutzow battalion have taken the opportunity of this Guard battalion being unformed to charge them. The Guard again have charged down here to try and break the remains of the Lutzow battalion. These battalions have nothing to charge this turn, and Charlie has charged with the Landwehr. So let's start by doing the Guard defensive volley. So this will be a superior volley, but at -2 because the Guard are unformed. They roll a 9. It'll also be at half effect, won't it, Charlie? So 9 -2 is 3. Half effect is 1 casualty on that Lutzow battalion. It takes them up to 6. All right, let's do your defensive volley down here for your Prussians. You've taken 6 casualties, so it'll be at -3.
But it's not inferior volley because I'm in line.
You are inferior volley though, because you are reservists. That will be no effect, so no casualties there. And then I've got a volley here from my column as you charge in against me. It is, and it does nothing. I lose fire discipline. So all of those shootings did nothing. Let's do the charge results. We'll start with the Lutzow against the Guard. Okay, so doing against the Guard, it's a -1 adjustment to the Prussians. The Guards get an 8. Prussians get a 4, so the Guard have won by 5, haven't they? So -5. Attacker retires with 1 casualty. So you have to go back 12, so you will unform those lancers. Okay, so Charlie gets a reroll, but he gets a reroll at -1 because his support is unformed. This is +3 to the French. I get 10. You can reroll your 2 if you want, but it's at -1. Okay, so it stays at a 7. And I've got a 9, 10, 11, 12. So I win by 5. I take the ground, you retreat with 1d3 casualties. You go off the board now with that battalion. All right, due to the number of casualties, Charlie will get a +1 bonus on this combat, but the French do get a reroll. Let's see how we do.
8.
Oh,
9.
Looks like you might win this one. Wow, on the 3, no, that's a 9. You've won by 6. That's victory. I rout and take 1d6 casualties, so that'll be a falter test on me. I take 5 more casualties. Wow, that's not good.
He's on 11 now.
Yeah. And I go backwards. And you take the ground, or you can halt and recover a casualty.
I'll probably halt and recover a casualty so they can...
Okay, I'll move my troops back. Charlie's trying to be pragmatic here. He's considering whether he should retire this unit voluntarily off the table. Which would avoid a falter test and avoid losing that other Lutzow battalion potentially up there. But it would mean that that battalion is now the last one left. It would be under 50%, so it would be a broken brigade. In the centre, the French have started to get ready for a flanking attack. Charlie's responded to that, but he's still got an exposed flank for this battalion here, so the position's looking really quite difficult here. The French have got to continue their move. I get the chance to move my chasseurs as well. So they had a redeploy order, which I used my ADCs on this turn as well. All right, are you going to do a voluntary retire, Charlie, or
yes,
not?
I'm going to.
All right, we'll do that, and I'll move my cavalry. All right, Charlie's decided to call it, and the French have achieved their victory conditions. So the objective of the game was to break 2 enemy brigades, and the French have now achieved that. The Lutzow battalion down here, the inevitable drive of the Guards battalion, this particular Guards battalion has caused Charlie to voluntarily withdraw the 2nd battalion of the Lutzow brigade, which was hovering on the table edge here. It would have been charged in the next turn and probably broken and fled anyway, and that allowed Charlie to not have to withdraw his Lutzow battalion up on this flank. The Prussians still have a strong force on this flank. Unfortunately, the artillery fire from the Guards again disordered the Lancers this turn, so they wouldn't be able to charge, and the Guards have been able to form square. If they had had initiative, hadn't been unformed, that might have been a different answer. The French in response were moving their chasseurs across to this flank to protect it. And over here, with the regulars being broken, we simply have 1 regular battalion of that broken brigade left and the 3 battalions of Landwehr, and they're surrounded by the Young Guard. Now, the Young Guard, the Voltigeurs have taken pretty heavy casualties. I think it's 5 and 11 casualties. So Charlie's quite close to breaking that Young Guard brigade, pretty much solely through artillery fire and 1 or 2 charges, especially that really effective charge his Landwehr did this turn. Charlie coming back to command the Landwehr and take them on their normal victorious scores. But the Young Guard here are now helping to outflank and surround the remaining Landwehr troops, so they've got no option other than to withdraw. Otherwise they'll be likely subject to flanking attacks and quickly broken. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed playing it on the terrain tiles. They're always great fun to play on, and I think create quite a spectacle. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and see you all again soon. And thanks for Charlie for his input at the end. Cheers.